Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Supply Chain. Before we begin, as always, I have a question for you. So AI is here to stay, and businesses have to adapt. So according to Gartner, what percentage of supply chain leaders are currently executing a reorganization or will do so in the next 12 months? What do you think? Well, let me know your guesses over on social and keep listening because I'll let you know at the end of the show. Now, today, I'm joined by a business that's modern innovations and unmatched industry expertise help more than 3,000 retailers, manufacturers, and logistics service providers confidently navigate supply chain complexity and disruption. Who are they? Well, it's Blue Yonder. Now, Blue Yonder is the AI company for supply chain. With a unified AI-driven platform and multi-tier network, Blue Yonder empowers businesses to operate sustainably, scale profitably, and delight their customers all at machine speed. And I'm joined today by Duncan Angove, Chief Executive Officer. Now, Duncan has more than 25 years of leadership experience in the enterprise software, supply chain, and retail industries. And prior to Blue Yonder, he held senior executive roles at Infor, Oracle, and Retech. Today, we're going to be talking all about supply chain in 2026 and beyond. We're going to be exploring the biggest challenges and opportunities for the year ahead and what leaders need to do next. We'll be shining a light on how organizations are adjusting to the new reality of ongoing disruption and innovation with AI. And we'll also be sharing Blue Yonder's long-term vision for transforming global supply chains for the better. So welcome to the show, Duncan.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm delighted to be here. Really looking forward to the discussion.
I am too. I'm so excited to have you here. Now, we've had Blue Yonder on the show a couple of times before. In fact, I think this will be your fifth appearance. So if anyone wants to catch up on any of that content, go to letstalksupplychain.com, search up Blue Yonder on our YouTube channel, on the website, anywhere else that you subscribe to the show. We've talked about transportation and modern supply chains, inventory and return strategy, synchronizing supply chain execution, and I'm really looking forward to diving into a brand new topic with you today. So to kick us off and get started, can you introduce yourself, share your journey? Because you have many years of industry experience during which you've been involved in some very, very big projects. You've lived all over the world. You've called yourself an early crypto geek. So I am completely fascinated, and I think the audience is too. So tell us everything.
Yeah, so I'm originally from England, but I sound South African or Australian because the US has butchered my accent. But I've been, 25 years now, and I've been in this. Actually, I've been in this space for 30 years now. And I was an engineer. I came out of engineering, which is quite rare to get a CEO in software that doesn't come from finance or sales. And this reflects our company. We are an engineering-led company that solves, big problems for customers with code and AI. So that's where I started my career. I was very, very lucky that I lived through multiple computing transitions. And I always loved the idea that you could leverage technology and code to basically solve problems on behalf of retailers and manufacturers and logistics providers. So when I was at Retech, it was an early retail software company. And this was around the emergence of the internet. And it wasn't just that software was becoming SaaS and being available on the cloud. It also reshaped the retail industry, right? The rise of omni-channel, the ability to centralize merchandising and retail operations and the benefits that delivered and all these sorts of things. So it was also a business model change. And then I was at Oracle and we scaled that business even more. At Infor, we were one of the first companies to build what I would call an industry cloud company. Back then, SaaS was more horizontal. It was CRM and ERP. And this was a bunch of clouds built for specific industries. And then now I'm at Blue Yonder and we're riding the AI transition and in a really, really unique space between what's happening in AI and what's happening in supply chain.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been a part of some just major transitions within the industry. So I've been in the industry about 25 years, so a little bit shy of your 30. And I don't know how you feel, but I sort of reflect and look back to where I started. I mean, I was using a typewriter to type out checks, I think, only maybe 12, 13 years ago. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that I was using a typewriter to be able to do that. And I remember being in logistics with like mountains of files and paperwork and, I think the thing back then was that I could use the computer to send an update to everybody once I typed in the update. Like I had to call for the update, type in the update. So I don't know about you, but it sounds like you have been through some major transitions in the industry and been a part of that. And that must have been so exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you think about these S curves, right? So first it was sort of mainframe to Unix and client server, and then it was cloud and SaaS, and then it was mobile, and now it's AI. But the adoption curve in every one of these S curves collapses dramatically, right? And the technology compounds all the time. So if you look at this instance, it's not just the fact that we can engineer intelligence with AI, it's also the fact that energy is becoming technology, biology is readable and writable, and it's the combinatorial impact of innovation that's going to be really, really interesting this time. But what we see every single time is when new technology emerges, people always try and do what they've always done, just better with this technology. And the example I always use, it's like when the movie camera came along, the first use case was filming theater. And you see that all the time with new technology. When the internet first came along, we took brochures and catalogs and just put it on a web page. Same thing with mobile. And we're seeing a similar thing with AI.
So fascinating. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. But I want to pick your brain as to sort of the challenges and the opportunities that you're seeing right now. I mean, we're at the beginning of 2026. I imagine some things are going to look different. Some are going to look the same. And there's sure to be, I think, something unexpected thrown into the mix. I mean, there always is in supply chain, right? We can't go a day without disruption. What do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities for the year ahead?
So the first thing I'll say is, unfortunately, disruption and complexity is business as usual in supply chain. That's part of being a supply chain professional, is managing that, whether it's climate change related or it's regional instability or it's industrial policy or all those sorts of things, right? That's just part and parcel of running a supply chain. And obviously we have a thesis around how you better manage all of that, but that's something that's just normal. So we don't get hung up on how you're going to solve for tariffs and all of that. You need to have a systemic approach to how you're just more agile and resilient and efficient all the time. So you can respond to any type of disruption. I mean, the biggest challenges that supply chain executives are always wrestling with, and this is no different, is they want to grow revenue. And the consumer landscape continues to change, particularly with, digital adoption is almost all the way there. And their behaviors are shifting. And then on the supply side, you've got long-term things that are reshaping everything, right? Some of the things we talked about around disruption. So in the face of all of that, how do I grow revenue and how do I cut cost? Right. And in supply chain, that's freight, it's labor, it's inventory, and it's waste. Right. That's what people are always trying to wrestle with. The thing I find sort of structurally interesting about what's happening right now, and we could say it's AI or maybe it's not, is the US economy and other economies around the world have decoupled growth from hiring. And you're seeing it in layoffs that are happening right now. You saw it in the GDP growth that we're probably going to print in Q4, and it's not coming along with hiring. So, and the unit cost of labor is dropping. And that's something that we haven't seen in a long, long time. And AI is probably a factor there.
Yeah. The job market is definitely going to look very, very different. I think, what we're hiring for, what that looks like, what the skills that we're expecting from the folks that we're hiring for certain positions is just going to look very different. I get this question all the time. What should I go and learn? Where, to try and get a job in supply chain? What does that look like? And I don't always have that answer. I'm not entirely sure because every organization is very different and they're looking for different things. I was talking on my live show just the other day about how the increase of job openings for storytellers has increased.
Yep.
Right. And so the job titles, the skills that we're looking for are just they just look a lot different now. So the job market is going to look different, as you just mentioned, but also as we go to hire, it's going to look a lot different. And we're going to be looking for different skills from the professionals that we're looking to bring on board.
100%, sir. And I get the same question, like, what should my child study in university?
Right.
Right? Oh, they're learning to be a programmer or an accountant or a lawyer. And those are all languages that a LLM can learn, and doesn't mean that they're not going to be needed anymore. So it's a very, very difficult question to answer. And a lot of the jobs that will exist in 5 or 10 years, the job titles, the roles don't exist today, and we don't know what they are, right? Like, you didn't have an influencer 10 years ago,
Fair.
So it's a tricky one. And it's when you think about like kind of the journey we've gone over the last 25 years around the adoption of digital, the revolution in a way was very uneven. Right. Mm-hmm. And the industries that benefited from it were all ones that were I would call them pixel based. They weren't atom based. Right. So it was like, it's social media, it is programming. It's things that benefited from rapid iteration of code. And you saw that just go like this: mobile, the services industries. But the ones that are involved in actually physically doing things, construction, where you need steel and raw materials, that was sort of left behind because you need the physical world. And that's where I think the advancements in robotics, the combination with AI with it to give it a brain, all of that it's going to move at a pace that we've never seen before.
Yeah.
And it will create a whole bunch of new job categories. Right. I'm going to be a manager of, I don't know, robots.
I love that. And I want to talk to you about how you're seeing organizations sort of adjust to this new reality. A lot of the conversations that I'm having, there's a lot of overwhelm out there. There's a lot of, I don't want to make the wrong decisions because I don't want to lose my job over it. And so disruption that we talked about earlier, it comes in a variety of different forms. So how are you seeing organizations adjust to this new reality that we've sort of just put out there for everybody?
Yeah, at an employee level, the winners are going to be the ones that really embrace AI. Like, they go all in and understand it. And literally, it'll sound silly, they try and put themselves out of a job, And in the early advent of all this technology, there are a lot of humans in the loop. And the reality is humans aren't quick and they're not precise. And they don't work 24/7, right? So as technology progresses, there are less and less humans in the loop. And you want to make sure that you are the human in the loop. And the way to do that is to understand AI deeply and how it helps you do your job or completely automate your job, right? So I think right now inside organizations, from a supply chain perspective, there's an awful lot of experimentation, but not a lot of companies sort of cross the chasm from pilot and sexy demo into production. And some of that is very particular to supply chain, because the consequences of getting something wrong have huge business implications, right? Yeah. It's not like I'm in a CRM and I accidentally, mistype someone's name in a contacts list. This is like you've ordered the wrong stuff, a truck's going to the wrong place, right? So, and that's the reason why, supply chain the users of it have generally been laggards. And it's because of that. So there's a lot of experimentation. I think people are in the early days of getting their arms around organization. What does that mean? What skills and roles do I need? What can I safely automate without sacrificing sort of speed and precision and all of that? But I think it's going to play out an awful lot quicker than people think.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think there's a balance to that too, right? Because you do have people within those positions that are handling everything right now. And with that comes sort of that knowledge that you need to download to make sure that you put that into the processes and everybody on the team understands. And so I think you're right. I think on the other side of the coin, though, there's this balance that organizations are playing to figure out where everything fits in. It's almost like a game of Tetris, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, and it's the good old change management. Right. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that movie for 25 years, even if just adopting regular software that automates things, but particularly in sort of what I would call intelligence. So if you think about this idea of applying intelligence to operations like supply chain, logistics, warehousing, inventory, what have you, it's been going on for a long time. You go back to like the 1940s, that's when linear programming was invented, right, to help sort out the logistics of supply chains in a war. And so that was the very first solver, right? And then you had integer programming, mixed integer programming. It's that whole idea of an in-memory solver to optimize something. like, trucking routes or loads or what have you. That's been around for a while. And then ML came along sort of 20 years ago, deep learning. People were using that to predict demand in a supply chain. And then you have the emergence of Gen AI. But all the way along the road, you've had to bring users along, because if you're someone that's been using Excel or your own sort of mental heuristics to make a decision, and now a black box is giving you the answer and you don't understand why that's the answer because it's a super sophisticated solve, there has to be a change management exercise to get the person to trust it. So simple things like, here is what you thought it would be as a human. Here's what the solver or the ML said it would be. Here are the actual results a day later, a week later, and who was right. And over time, you build trust in the system, right? And it's the same thing with sort of Gen AI, right? The benefit there is these generative AI systems are actually good at explainability and reasoning and explaining their chain of thought, which gives me some hope.
And that's exactly what is needed. You use the word trust. And I also want to put the word bias in there as well. I think if we can understand why it came to the solutions that it did, then we can better trust it. And we can also pass that solution on to the rest of our executive team. It's
Correct.
when we've got some human bias in there, or it's going to make us look bad to the executive team. That's when I think it gets a little bit dicey, when we stop listening.
Yeah, why did the human override the machine? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say it like the way so we talk a lot about helping our customers run their supply chains with machine speed and precision. Right.
Right.
A machine is always going to be faster. And you would like to think, with all the advancements in intelligence, that it's going to be smarter, it's going to be more precise, and it's going to be faster. And anytime you put a human in the loop, it slows that down. Right. That's actually the break on the true unlock of productivity. With AI is that whole thing is, do I trust it? And I have a tendency to want to put a human in the loop everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know we talked a little bit about disruptions. I actually want to talk about what you touched on earlier around preparing for disruptions. How do we do that? I think a lot of times we're not talking about the how. We're talking about the fact that disruptions are here to stay. We need to get uncomfortable, but we're not necessarily talking about the how. And I think we need to talk about it. I think there's a key distinction in the fact that we obviously can't prevent or avoid them altogether. But I also think that with collaboration, the right combination of technology, workflows, mindset, we can strengthen our positions and minimize the impact of those disruptions. So I want to go back to where you sort of started this part of the conversation and talk about how we prepare for disruptions.
I think fundamentally it is about speed and precision, and having a business and software architecture that enables that. And the starting points for supply chain today, historically, in customers, doesn't look like that, right? It's a bunch of fragmented departments and silos that all have competing compensation incentives, and then a bunch of systems that are fragmented under them that sort of reinforce those silos. And the last thing it operates like is a chain. It's not. It's a whole bunch of disconnected links. Not to mention that gets compounded by the fact that supply chains are multi-enterprise, and you have to actually go outside your own company. So that is not how you build something that is fast and precise and is agile and can behave as one entity that can orchestrate and decide as one. Right? It's very, very hard to be fast if you're not operating as one. With total alignment around what the thing is. So that really, in our mind, is the biggest opportunity, is to actually think about your supply chain as a platform and an operating system that enables sort of cross-functional, cross-organizational kind of collaboration, decisioning, and orchestration at speed, all infused with sort of machine intelligence and speed. Like, that's really, speed is the antidote to everything, right? Mm-hmm. And the faster you are, the quicker you can see things, respond to them, capture opportunity, counter risk and issues, all of that. There was a guy, we actually think about this as something we call SADAR, see, analyze, decide, and act. And there was a guy called Colonel John Boyd in the 70s, he was an Air Force guy, fighter pilot. And he had this thesis around, why is it when you put a pilot in the same airplane, okay, the same jet, that one of them wins dogfights all the time and the other doesn't, with the same stuff? And his conclusion was it was this thing called the OODA loop, which is basically the better pilots are able to absorb, orient, decide, and act, and they get inside the dogfighting participants' decision loop. And that's why they win every single time. And that's sort of all about speed as a competitive weapon. And if you look at supply chains, every metric we have is all about speed, on time in full, how fast are your turns, flow. It's all just in time. It's all rooted in speed. So speed is the anecdote, but don't sacrifice precision.
Absolutely. Well, and you talk about it being a competitive advantage, and the way that you are able to articulate that and put that into context really showcases how important it is and how it can be a competitive advantage. And I always talk about, the speed of technology, the speed of how things are changing consistently for us at the moment. And if we're not making sure that you've got that precision, but you're working at speed, you're not going to be able to keep up to all the changes that are going to be coming at us in the next 2 to 5 years. I mean, we don't even know what it's going to be capable of, what supply chains are necessarily going to look like in 2 to 5 years. And if you already don't have that in place, you're going to have some challenges keeping up. So I want to talk to you about that long-term vision, because as I just said, global supply chains are transforming. They're transforming today, but they're going to look a lot different, I think, in 2 to 5 years from now. How do you see technology shaping that future? I mean, there's certain things that we don't know, but based on what we know today.
Yeah, I mean, and AI is a generational technology that will fundamentally reshape the way we do all of this. And I kind of go back to theater and and the movie camera and all of that. Like, that's something we can't do. And a lot of the applications I'm seeing of AI and agentic today is very human oriented. And you're just trying to automate what you've always done, and you're spending a huge amount of time trying to keep the human in the loop. Right. Even the way it manifests in application screens, and that can't be the future. Our vision for how a supply chain looks in the future is it's very much autonomous. One of the challenges with our space, and this, Sarah, is this industry comes up with buzzwords and ideas, and we sort of
yes,
recycle them every 5 years. So maybe, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, we probably talked about the autonomous supply chain. No one ever got there. AI and robotics allows us to do it. For the first time ever, we can actually truly dream of a whole bunch of autonomy engines that run someone's supply chain with ultimately no human in the loop.
It's so funny. I never thought that I would hear supply chain and dreamers in the same sentence.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But I never thought to put those two words together. Yeah. Right. And everybody's like, supply chain, is it boring? Is it sexy? Like, what is it? And I think it's exciting. And you just sort of made mention to that with the fact that supply chain professionals, leaders, executives can dream, right? Yeah. They can dream of what could be possible and then potentially execute on it today.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it is about dreaming. I mean, supply, it was interesting. If you look at like earnings calls and you look at like words they use, in the last 5 years, the number of times supply chain has been mentioned is grown 3x, which wow. I don't think surprise any of us what's going on, right? AI is probably 50, right? So, but it's such an important part of everyday life, and all the way back to the Silk Roads and then globalization and all of that, it's lifted billions of people into the middle class and improved the standard of living around the world, right? And yeah. When you add technology to it, the role of technology has always been to turn scarcity into abundance. That's really what it does. And when you put those two together, that's what we've seen with supply chains, right? Mm-hmm. That things have become cheaper and more available, they become more abundant, right? And that's what excites me. People always say, "Oh, what is a supply chain?" I think about it from a Blue Yonder perspective. Like, there's this invisible sort of digital substrate that you see everywhere. If you see like a logistics truck or a retailer truck on the road, I almost imagine our digital invisible substrate running under it. And it's there because we put it there. And what's on it is on there because that's where we put it. And it's going to a shelf because we said a consumer wants it there. And it's all around the world, this invisible set of software rails that the world's supply chains run on. And our job now is we think we can make it more autonomous, right? Yeah. It'll be faster, more precise, things will be more abundant and cheaper.
Yeah. Now you just talked about AI. You talked about a roadblock possibly being that human in the loop, right? Organizations just aren't approaching, or I don't think they are, they're like approaching AI strategically or at scale quite yet. I think there's a lot of professionals, leaders sort of starting, like you said, testing. They're still in the pilot phase. Do we, don't we? What do you think is standing in the way? I mean, you said human in the loop, but is there anything else that's standing in the way? Like, what are some of the roadblocks to adoption?
I think, first of all, it's a mindset. It's decades of this is how we've always done it. And
Mm,
we've just, on a simple level, we've experienced that over the last 5 years as we tried to educate the market that you shouldn't keep running your supply chain in functional silos, and you shouldn't keep buying fragmented point solutions for each one. You should think about this as one joined up system. And even that was 30 years of sort of change management. The way the analysts look at it, they just come in and they cover one product. When someone's looking at a warehouse system, they don't care about the impact that has on freight spend with their transportation system or with inventory. No one thinks joined up. And the way they're compensated is local. This person over here cares about freight spend. This person cares about labor in a warehouse. And they sometimes compete, right? So
yeah.
you might get local kind of optimums, but you get a global suboptimal solution. So even there, we've struggled with it. Now you introduce AI, and to avoid just filming theater, and just doing what you've always done, just with agentic stuff, you've actually got to step back and think about it from first principles. So we're owned by Panasonic. So I spent the last year learning Japanese,
Okay.
and and one of the phrases they have in there is shoshin, and what shoshin literally means is beginner's mind, right?
Mm,
And it's not a framework; it's a mindset where actually the worst people to innovate in a category are people that are experts in it and have been in it for decades. Because in the beginner's mind, everything is possible. In the
right.
expert, only a few things are. So this mindset you have to bring to it and actually think from first principles. Imagine you don't have all these departments and armies of people, that you don't have all these buildings and inventory and trucks. Actually come at it and say, how would you reimagine the world from kind of an AI first mindset?
Right. That dreamer mentality that we were talking about
Yeah.
before. But also, I think we've got to get back to basics. And it's not just about communicating with each other. We really need to understand the language, the prompt engineering portion of this in the way that we're going to communicate. We're going to be able to react. We're going to be able to talk to the LLMs for them to really work with us and for us and not against us. Right.
So there's competing thoughts on this, right? So one is, well, everyone thinks that an LLM is going to become a commodity, right? And you just pick
Okay.
you, and they leapfrog every year. We're talking about Chat GPT 5.2, then it was Gemini, and now we're talking about
Hmm.
Claude Code. It just keeps going like that. And where does value actually accrue, right? Does it accrue with the language models? And for example, when the internet came along in the year 2000, the most valuable company was Cisco, because people believed the router was the gateway to the internet. Whoever owned that would win everything. Today, Cisco is NVIDIA, right? But now everyone's coming out with their own specialized chips. So the debate is open around where value accrues. And the recent narrative is that AI kills SaaS. You won't
Okay.
need it because AI is going to do it all for you. And you've got people saying, "Oh, I had my AI write a CRM system for me on the weekend." Right? It's very, very different in supply chain because again, we don't move pixels, we move atoms. And in order to optimize something, you need a real-time understanding of the true world state. That truck is there. That inventory is on that shelf. Bob and Bill did show up for work today at the warehouse. And without that, you're optimizing something that probably can't be optimized because it doesn't represent the real world, right? And then once you've optimized something, you actually need to go back and change the worldview. Let's actually pick this instead of that, right? So that's why supply chain is different, because it touches the physical world. You need bridges from the digital to the physical. And then you build AI on top of that.
Mhm. Well, and I wrote something down because you said that a lot of companies right now they're stuck in the pilot phase. How do we get them out of it? How do we
It,
get them to approach a true AI powered supply chain, what that could look like, how it can optimize, how it can sort of change their supply chains?
believe it or not, one of the biggest obstacles is data. And we saw the same thing with, as it relates to ML, is do you have the right data? Is there quality in the data? Does it have the right semantics, or can it scale and compute all of that? So helping people understand and manage their data is sort of step one, which is why we're built on the AI data cloud as our stack. And then we inject intelligence on top of that. But you said it earlier, a lot of this is about trust. Right. And can you trust the answer that the system is coming up with? And again, we need absolute precision in supply chain. My gosh, we spend decades squeezing basis points of forecast accuracy out of a demand plan, right? Yeah. So we can't just give all that up because we say, hey, we can hire an agent instead of a human. So focusing on trust and change management and explainability, those are all going to be things that are important. But the biggest one really, Sarah, is actually real value. Like this is applied AI in the frontier, solving real problems, delivering real value. And that's where it's critical. And, we run 27 billion AI workloads a day on our platform.
That's a big number.
It's a big number, right? It's a huge number. And it's twice as many Google searches per day, right? So it's massive AI at scale, and it generates billions and billions of dollars of real value in terms of labor cost reduction, inventory, availability, which drives sales, less freight, all of that. So it's real AI applied at scale.
Well, and that's so fascinating. 27 billion a day. That just goes to show how much work goes into supply chains and running supply chains globally across the industry. So I'm so glad that you shared that. Now, I think just earlier this month, you announced several AI enhanced solutions, including agents to help retailers. Can you give us some practical examples of AI in action? And maybe this part will also help get organizations out of pilot mode.
So the first thing is, AI isn't just language models. AI, for us, we broaden the conversation to intelligence, which would include solvers and optimization solutions. It also includes deep learning, ML, and it includes Gen AI. And the most powerful solutions you come up actually leverage all three, right, on a common set of quality data. And that's really the approach that we've taken to it. And because you just don't want to throw Gen AI at everything, right? It's a prompt in ChatGPT costs on average 20 minutes of having a lamp on. Kind of crazy to think about. Like these are very energy expensive. So if something's already been solved in an optimization engine or let's not just throw this at it and just throw tokens and money at it. So let's be efficient. So this idea of composite intelligence, an example would be in a warehouse. One of the challenges you have is, where do you put inventory? Where do you store it? Where do you slot it, right? And this idea of slotting optimization, and it's a multi-factor problem to have, because stuff that gets picked frequently and is sold in the stores, you want near the outbound door. Stuff that's not, you don't, right? Stuff that often gets picked together, you want together. So you're trying to minimize labor, you're trying to increase throughput. There are all these things you're trying to do. And it requires billions of different permutations, right? Because when you're moving something, you're taking something else out of that spot. And it's always been very, very hard. And it's been historically done through heuristics or a spreadsheet. So we used machine learning to predict the demand for that item. We then ran it through a solver to actually optimize these billions of combinations. And then we used Gen AI to explain the result to a warehouse operator who is not a data scientist, and inject trust into it and allow them to interrogate it. Well, why did you pick? Intuitively, I thought you would have picked this item and not that item. And it will explain why. And you can go deeper. So it's almost like we pre-built a whole team of data scientists into a warehouse that optimize your operations and that can explain it in plain English to someone that's not a data scientist, right? Delivering, the value on this is insane. In terms of the increase in throughput in a building. So that's just an example.
That is such a great example. Imagine being able to predict a product that is going to be sold over and over and over again. It needs to be in a certain spot of the warehouse to really optimize what everybody's doing. And you can take a moment out of your day to actually have a conversation and ask, why did you decide this? What prompted you to say this would be the product over this product? I really think this product needs to be over here. And they come back and say, well, no, this is why, this is how we're thinking about it. But also, I think it gives some accountability as well to the machine and to the human, where they can say, well, listen, we were listening to what, the system told us to do. Whether it worked out or it didn't, you actually have something tangible that you can go back on to say, well, why did this go wrong?
100%. And in the end state here, this becomes autonomous. The human's in the loop now to build trust. Do you remember when we first did forecasting and replenishment in retail? We called the output of it a suggested order quantity, just a suggestion. Yeah. And the user could either take the suggestion or overrule it. We don't call it that anymore. It just spits out and automates all the ordering for you. And the same thing will happen here. And that slotting is just one example. We have tens of examples all over that warehouse that does exactly the same thing. Where the end state is, certainly you're able to automate all the knowledge work out of it. And ultimately, with where robotics are going, we'll be able to automate physical labor out of it. And you'll get to the point where a warehouse will be truly autonomous.
Well, and I had my logistics hat on when you said that, and ETA came up in my mind, estimated time of arrival. And I was like, do we even use that anymore? Because I'm not entirely sure. Because it's not estimated anymore. No, it really shouldn't be with all of the information that we have today.
Yeah, you have telematics on the truck, when it's coming in, right? When it's delayed. And again, operating as one system. So one of the other agents we built actually used computer vision in the yard. What happens now when a truck pulls up, it comes up to the gate and they have to check the license plate and the manifest and what's on it. And then they tell the warehouse, this guy's in here and he's parked here. And when's the dock door going to be available? Like now what happens, all of that happens simultaneously, right? The computer vision, you don't need a guard anymore. The computer vision actually reads it and does all of it for you, right? You don't need a human at the gate anymore. And then it notifies the DC. We optimize which door it should go to based on what's on the truck and all of that. So the whole thing becomes autonomous.
Well, and it's sort of like the domino effect, because the driver gets in and out quicker. They can get on their next route quicker. They can potentially get paid for more loads in that day because they're able to move in and out a lot quicker. They're able to get things delivered, picked up, et cetera, et cetera. And so it actually makes an impact throughout the supply chain that we might not even be talking about today, or that we might not even see on a daily basis.
Yeah, now, Speed, Sarah. It's all about speed.
Yeah, right? We go back to that word. That word keeps coming up, Duncan. Speed is the word, but precision in front of that, I think, too, right? I love that. That's a great word. Now, I want to ask you, because I think we've got a lot of organizations that think they've got innovative supply chains. We've got a lot of solutions out there. What do you think truly sets an organization apart as being innovative? What does that actually mean?
So just going back to speed, I read a book over the actually late last year called The Formula. And it was actually the history of Formula One racing. And it's very readable. It's, even if you're not into Formula One. And it went through the whole history of Formula One and all of that. And kind of the takeaway I took from it was the way that you win a race, or the way a team wins the championship, is not based on their pit strategy, their tire strategy, the driver they have. It's none of that, right? The way you win a race, and this will sound really silly, is you build the fastest car.
Okay.
And the way you build the fastest car is in research. The breakthroughs come in research. Who invented a completely new way to create downforce on the car around the corner so it can corner faster without creating drag? How do you build a tire that's more durable but doesn't slow you down because of friction, right? So it's research. That's where the breakthroughs come from. And I always say, when I look at like enterprise software and I look at a lot of our customers in supply chain, they spend a lot of time on the D in R&D and not enough on the R, because it's always, I've got to go do this or this or this. So That's sort of the dirty secret, is there is no R and R&D. And it's the organizations that really embrace that. And I go back to Shoshin and thinking from first principles. That's where you truly see innovation.
So on one hand, it's speed, but on the other hand, it's a little bit of slowing down, because you need to slow down to be able to do the research for you to speed up.
Yeah, we're in this industry and in the business that we're in. We can't do the Facebook thing, which is go fast and break stuff. That does not work, right? So yes, it all comes back. Even in our business, it's speed and precision. And people might think that it's always this triangle, right? Innovation, quality, speed, and people believe there's trade-offs between them. Quality is actually related to speed. If you get quality right first time, you go faster.
Well, and maybe it works in conjunction. Maybe it's not an either or. Maybe it's a working in conjunction that really brings everything to sort of that magical success piece of the puzzle. You know? So I want to ask you, I can't believe we're at the end. This has been fascinating. And I really appreciate you for sharing a lot of those examples and how you're thinking about the industry. What do you think is one of the main things that supply chain leaders should be doing right now? I mean, not just to prepare themselves for this year, but I think set them up for success over the next 5 years.
I think in a world of AI, it's even more imperative that you think about your supply chain as a platform, as a unified orchestrating system, and not a bunch of silos running fragmented technology, because that's what your AI is going to need to help orchestrate all of this in an intelligent way with machine speed and precision. That platform needs to include a network of your trading partners, your suppliers, and your carriers, right? You can't have a purpose-built AI platform for supply chain that does not include the network component of it. And the parallel here is the telegraph and how that transformed commerce, created modern finance, transformed how wars were fought, because it changed the speed at which things moved, right? For the first time, information moved faster than physical things. Right. And that's very much around, that's how you really give yourself a sensing and a decisioning framework, is actually having a network as part of that.
Yeah. And I think keeping in mind the investment that we're all looking to make into technology and AI and a unified platform, if you're still working in a siloed environment, you might want to fix that first.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, right? And that goes back to data as well. You need one common platform. Now, we don't want to recreate the sort of monolithic Sisyphean ERP implementation, and that's certainly not the intent, but you don't need to. I mean, the modern supply chain platform is not architected like that.
Yeah. And I think this is such a great time of year to stop, to reflect, strategize for the future. Both personally, but also professionally. I think dealing with disruption has forced businesses to be reactive, to make decisions at speed based on gut feel. But it's also so important we make strides to change that. And I've loved doing that today with you. I mean, thinking about what we need to do now, why, how, and how it's all going to shape the future. Now, did you have a guess at today's big question? At the top of the show, I asked you, according to Gartner, what percentage of supply chain leaders are currently executing a reorganization or will do so in the next 12 months because of AI? Duncan, I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Do you know what it is?
I've got to believe it's north of 80%.
You are right. It's a huge 90%. Wow. 90% are reorganizing their supply chains to really incorporate the use of AI. That is huge. So it's really important to make those changes strategically and have clear goals for what you need for your supply chain. To learn how Blue Yonder could help you adapt, reorganize for an AI-first future, head over to blueyonder.com to learn more. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Check out more content from the best and brightest over on letstalksupplychain.com or on our YouTube channel. I want to give a massive thanks to the team at Blue Yonder for making this episode happen. Duncan, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing all your insights.
Thank you, Sarah. It was a lot of fun. Really great discussion.
So until next time, I'm Sarah Barnes-Humphrey, and this is Let's Talk Supply Chain.